Well, guys, it says my Overwatch game is running. I was gonna do a video on that, but it's not loading. It's not loading. It says game is running. So we're gonna watch this. It's a Life Noggin episode. You don't know. Just don't look at that. Don't look at that either. Um, in fact, don't look at anything. Don't look at that. I'll give you bad ideas. Oh,
Is
it's
this your life plan? Go to school, get $50,000 in.
Buffer? No, buffering is not my life plan. Are you okay?
Hey there. Welcome to Life Noggin. A
Aw,
few
it's
weeks
so
ago,
sudden.
we made a video about some unbelievable
Here's
myths
it.
that people thought were true in the 1950s, and you all loved it so much that we decided to make another one. This
Oh, I should
time
probably
on
watch
some
that
of the
too.
wacky beliefs of the 1920s. Exhibit A, female hysteria. Back in the 20s, people were convinced that any woman with an increased libido, bad language, and the tendency to get into mischief had a disease they called hysteria. They thought this was a real biological illness. Other symptoms included nervousness, headaches, and bodily disease, which could literally be anything. This theory of hysteria dates all the way back to ancient Egypt and was originally believed to be caused by demons and things of supernatural nature. Even after
I really like that animation. Oh, sorry if I was talking without pausing the video.
After it was recognized these women weren't possessed, people still believed that this was a legitimate medical problem for a long time. It was even listed as a mental illness by the American Psychological Association until the mid-20th century. Another absolutely
Wow, stereotypes against women were real.
ridiculous belief running rampant in the 1920s was
Yeah, I
something
am
called
subscribed to this
eugenics,
fool.
the
You
idea
should
that
too.
we should
And me
control
too.
the genetic traits passed down in society. Sure, that may sound like a noble plan, but eugenics spiraled into extreme discrimination against people deemed quote-unquote unfit to procreate. Think people of color,
Wow, that is like ultra racist. Ultra racist and sexist.
low-income individuals, the mentally ill, the disabled, and people with
Oh, wait, no, not sexist because you need women to procreate.
criminal records. But the problems eugenics supporters wanted to rid from society actually relied on a mix of environmental and biological factors, rather than just genes themselves. That didn't slow the movement though. The US government supported this mission, and even went as far as forced sterilization of populations they deemed unworthy. This dark chapter of US history actually inspired the Nazis, and often isn't discussed. But it's important to acknowledge
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know about this. If you did, then wow, you're smart, or you've watched this video. I was introduced to this guy by a friend. He was just like, I was just like, huh, where'd you get your information from? Like, it's obviously not from class. He's like, oh, I get it from YouTube. And I was like, me too. Like, who do you watch? Like, Life Noggin? I'm like, who's that? And he's like, oh, you should go watch him.
this when we're looking at the wacky ideas from this time period. On a brighter note, well, kind of, a very special kind of energy drink was all the rage in the 1920s. Nowadays, energy drinks get their energy from some kind of neurological stimulant, but back in the 1920s, they used real, radioactive energy from the element radium. It was the roaring 1920s and people were literally glowing. These radioactive drinks promised to boost energy levels and cure a number of physical ailments. Some even claimed to be aphrodisiacs. These beverages were the drink of choice for wealthy Americans who were unaware of the horrible side effects like holes in the skull and jawbones. And it didn't stop with drinks. Radium was added to butter, paint, and even clothing before these products were made illegal in the 1930s. It's wild to think that some things we strongly believe in now may eventually be proven completely wrong. Maybe one day they'll prove that there actually is life on Mars, or that animals can understand us. You are a very good boy, and I just want you to know that. So what decade do you want us to look at next? Let us know in the comment section below.
Okay, since I just saw that, let's backtrack. And my Overwatch game is loading, and I'm still not doing something.
Sounds like I'm hungry.
Hey there. Welcome to Life Noggin.
Wow,
With
these are
every
all
new
really
scientific
short.
discovery comes a chance to laugh at what people used to believe. From smoking is healthy to the earth is flat. There's a lot of crazy stuff out there. Seriously guys, the earth is not flat. While theories like geocentrism mostly died out centuries ago, as recently as the mid-20th century, people believed in things like lobotomies and drinking during pregnancy. So let's take a look at some of these scientific things we believed in the 1950s. As I mentioned earlier,
Ye old 1950s, the good old days.
people didn't always think that smoking cigarettes was bad for you. Cigarette companies used to boast that their brand wouldn't hurt your throat and sinuses. Some advertisements even claimed to have scientific proof that their cigarettes were less irritating than their competitors. As it turns out, the researchers who found this proof were actually sponsored by the cigarette company, and other scientists who weren't sponsored found evidence to dispute these claims. But people still believe that smoking wasn't harmful. Studies in the coming decades obviously proved that wrong. Along those lines, the 50s were the peak lobotomy era. Lobotomies were a type of surgery that involved drilling 2 holes into the skull and pushing spikes called leucotomes into the brain. The surgeon would then move the leucotomes back and forth in the frontal lobe of the brain. Lobotomies were supposed
Why?
to help with all kinds of mental issues, from depression to schizophrenia. Portuguese
Yeah, by killing you.
neurologist Antonio Egas Moniz invented the lobotomy in 1935, and he actually received the Nobel Prize for his invention in 1949. But by
Boy.
the 60s, they were really falling out of favor, since they left a lot of patients apathetic, lethargic, and even with major personality changes. Another
Oh, so it doesn't kill them. Just, poking nails in your brain sounds something like what would kill you.
interesting mental health trend in the 1950s was LSD therapy. Dr. Albert Hoffman discovered
Oh gosh.
the effects of the drug in 1943, and its medicinal use continued through the next couple decades. LSD was used by doctors and researchers with purposes ranging from treating alcoholism to calming patients in psychiatric wards. This happened until it was made illegal in many countries in the 60s. Despite all this, the 1950s also saw a lot of scientific advancements and new discoveries. The polio vaccine was created in response to huge outbreaks in the early 1950s. Psychologists began to focus more on behaviorism as well as cognitive psychology. The idea of climate change was becoming more of a concern too, as scientists researched
Yeah, you should probably think about that.
rising CO2 rates. But overall, it's pretty clear that a lot of scientific facts and theories weren't understood nearly as well in the 1950s. So I, for one, am glad to live in the present day. So I think it'd be a fun idea if I covered multiple decades. What do you think? Which decade should I talk about next? Let me know in the comment section.
How about well, in 2020 you should talk about 2010 to 2020. The 2010s. That sounds so dumb.